Just want to say, hey guys, it's Klaus. Welcome to another episode, and a particular shout out today to everyone from the UK, Great Britain, the United Kingdom. Go figure, eh? A country that can actually, has the balls to refer to itself as Great Britain or, United Kingdom. Yeah, where do they get the balls? And it's one of the only countries left in the world that has still retained the monarchy. Have they retained the monarchy, or has the monarchy retained greatness for Britain? Have you ever thought of it that way? I mean, we know that it is kind of a strange place where there's a few people running around. There's a guy in that country that believes that he is a prince, and the population refers to him as our prince. There's a guy in that country who is a prince. Seriously. I mean, the whole structure of the country is not understood well in other places in the world, especially in North America. And it's, I think, because most people are ignorant or just too lazy to really try and understand. And I've tried to understand. Let me try and explain it for you. And you people watching from the UK, leave a comment. Let me know if you think I got it right. Or point out some of the errors I've made. But just to try and explain it, the way I think it works is that the United Kingdom is both ruled and governed. It's governed so that it can function day to day, and it's ruled so that it can be great. There's two pillars. That are necessary as the support for this structure. And the one is the government. And it's, pretty much kind of like the government everywhere else. There's a bunch of common people, and they elect guys to represent the nation. Just like most other governments, a lot of governments are based on the British model. And it's the job of the government to kind of, do stuff for the country, to govern and make sure that everything's working. And they do a complete, utter shit job of it most of the time. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, you just look back over the years, over history, and the leaders of governments in the world, like how many are truly great? Almost none. If you try and remember who are the great leaders of the past, not just of the world, who could you think of that everyone in the world would agree that they were great leaders? For me, I don't know all of them, but what comes to mind is, a guy like Winston Churchill goes down in history as one of the greatest leaders, or maybe Nelson Mandela, right? A guy that everyone in the world, was he actually a leader at one time? He should have been if he wasn't. But that guy was great. There's got to be an American in there, probably. It's got to be Roosevelt or Kennedy. One of them that converted the United States into a powerhouse that could help save the world from tyranny, and the other guy went to the moon. Basically, his vision led us to outer space, and without him, we probably would never have had Star Trek or Star Wars. And I'm sure there's been a few other great leaders on Earth somewhere, a Chinese one, or maybe someone from France, but very forgettable. Not anyone that the whole world today would know. I pose that 99.9% of all leaders throughout history are forgettable and useless and pathetic and stupid, and no one will ever remember. And that pillar of a society, the governing pillar, is quite often scratched and tarnished and crumbling and horrible. And luckily, it does not have to support much weight. The other pillar is the monarchy, and it's their job to rule, not to govern. And the head of the monarchy, since the time of Winston Churchill himself after World War II, has been headed by Queen Elizabeth. So you have the one pillar that's the government, which is run by the prime ministers, 90% of which we all forget eventually, and the other pillar, which is headed by the Queen, representing the monarchy. And that pillar must be strong and impeccably shiny and untarnished. Must never, ever have a crack or even a smudge or even a speck of dust on it. You see, the monarchy, the Queen, must symbolize the greatness that all of the kingdom's citizens should strive to achieve, a task that the government has no hope in hell of ever doing. In fact, the elected commoners in Parliament are the opposite. They're the clueless morons, the idiots, the backstabbers, the selfish, self-entitled pricks and bitches. Remember, the Queen's been around since World War II, 60, 70 years, since Winston Churchill, and she's had to sit through this whole conveyor belt of cretins that's just come one after another through your country. Just recently in this whole entering the European Union and then Brexiting the European Union. It's just a collage of idiots. Like, who was the guy that thought it was a good idea to join in the first place? And remember, the government and the crown meet once a week to discuss things. Who was the moron that met with the Queen that one time and said, well, Her Majesty, we seem to be having quite a bit of difficulty keeping the Commonwealth together. That group of countries that we've had a long history with, that we seem to have things in common with. We decided to forget about all that, and we're going to make a go at it of joining the Europeans. What do you think about that, Mum? And the Queen probably looked at him, very politely, and without blinking, said something like, I see. Well, we obviously don't have very much in common with them now, do we? I hope you've thought this through. And of course the moron didn't think it through, and he led the country, blundered into some sort of a union with a bunch of countries that you have nothing in common with. And even recently now, the Brexiting, the exiting, the vote, oh, let's have a referendum. Should we stay? Should we go? And then the lying and the backstabbing starts. There's actually some politicians, there's some woman that during she didn't want to take a side. I'm not really sure whether I'm for or against it. I'll just wait till after the referendum, and whatever the vote is, then I'll run a campaign and say, well, since I didn't really commit one way or another, I'm the most qualified to run the country now. Like, what the fuck? All so self-centered, self-serving politicians, friends who've worked together for decades, whose families know each other, whose kids played together, backstabbing themselves, throwing each other under the bus, trying to come out on top, trying to grab hold of power for themselves, none of them giving a shit about anyone in the country. This is the government side. This is the government pillar, the prime minister, the politicians, the commoners that are elected to govern. What's so fucking great about that? Nothing. Any country that just has a president or a prime minister, 99% of the time is just a joke. Look at the United States now. They've got a guy that could accidentally tweet his way into a nuclear crisis. And a country, a kingdom, cannot be great with a leader who 99% of the time is an asshole. 1% doesn't cut it, and that's where the monarchy comes in. The Queen must instill that sense of greatness 100% of the time. I mean, there's been some good leaders as well in the past, and there's probably been a conversation something like this in Buckingham Palace, where the Prime Minister has walked in and said, I'm sad to report that we have a bit of a problem down in South America, the Falkland Islands, to be exact. It seems the Argentinians have occupied the islands, quite aggressively, I might add, and we've asked them to leave and they've refused, so I suppose it's time to get the fleet in the water and go down there and take it back. And the Queen probably looked at the Prime Minister very politely and said something like, well, Margaret, the nerve. Not something you'd expect from the Argentinians. Well, I suppose you must do as you must. Do we have the support of the Americans? And the Prime Minister replied, well, I talked to Ronnie this morning and he's 100% behind us. He said, go down there and kick their fucking asses off that rock. But make no mistake, 99% of the elected commoners that you have in Parliament are just clueless, selfish morons. And it's up to the crown to maintain the greatness, the symbol that the whole country should aspire to. And the Queen has successfully done this impeccably for decades, for 60, 70 years, I'm not sure how long. But eventually the crown will have to be passed down to the next heir. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I mean, Prince William? Really? What has he got? I mean, other than Kate. I mean, well, that's all he's got is Kate. Without Kate, Prince William would be like, who? And Harry, let's not even get into it. I mean, we live in a different time now, and I think this new generation just doesn't quite get it, the importance of the whole institution. I mean, they get it more than they do in the United States. Like, what do they got in the United States? They got like the Kardashians. So what's the role model there? I mean, someone that could show you how to twerk, someone that could make you more confident in yourself, so that you could feel comfortable taking a selfie of your ass even though it's pretty big. There's nothing great about that. But my point here is that the crown is hugely important because morons, backstabbers, and liars and cheats come and go in the government, and they're quickly forgotten decades later. But the crown must be solid. And when the crown passes from the queen, who is being the queen, you better hope that whoever that crown lands on doesn't fuck it up. Because if the standard slips and the country turns its back on the monarchy, or heaven forbid loses or walks away from it, then you'll be just like anywhere else. There will be nothing great about Britain. You might as well change the name to just, regular Britain. It will no longer be a united kingdom. You'll have to forget the word king. It'll just be a united dumb. The UD, just a regular country, just like the United States or Portugal or Canada. And that's my 2 bits. That's my attempt at explaining it. How come you guys have the balls to call yourselves Great Britain, the United Kingdom? That's my explanation. Let me know how I did. If you're watching from the UK, leave a comment and point out everything I got wrong, and let me know what you think. And if you're from anywhere else and you have no clue, leave a comment, because everyone deserves the right to participate. And any of you that know anyone that knows anything about history or the monarchy, pass this video on to them. So maybe we can get some smart people here to leave comments and educate us in everything that I've failed to explain adequately. Because, I tried my best. And shout out to you guys in Great Britain!